morning. Today is Wednesday. Put a safer over there for you. Not that one. No. That one. Yep. It is Wednesday. It is Yud Iyar. Is it the 10th?
Yeah, I think it is.
I believe it's the 10th of Iyar. Tafshin Pei Beis. And we are starting a brand new Sefer and a brand new Maimer. Yesterday we finished Sefer Mamar Tafshin Yud Gimel in Agut HaShah, Baruch Hashem, big milestone. Today we're starting Tafshin Yud Dalid. The first Maimer of Tafshin Yud Dalid, which the Rebbe said on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, Tafshin Yud Dalid, it begins actually on the same phrase that the previous Maimer began. Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecha, this day is the beginning of your actions, the beginning of your creations. And in fact, the Rebbe asks the same question that he asked in the previous Maimer. But here goes on and explains it in a slightly different manner than he did before in the previous Maimer. So without further ado, page 3, Gimel, right in the beginning.
Gimel. Okay.
That's it.
Yep.
Zeh Hayom Tchilas Ma'asecha. This day is the beginning of your actions, of your creations. This is a phrase drawn, a quote, from the Musaf prayer of Rosh Hashanah, which means it's also based on the Talmud in Tractate Rosh Hashanah. This day is the beginning of your creations. This day of Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of your actions, Hashem's actions. There is the well-known question, how do we say that this day of Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of Hashem's actions? The world was actually created when? It started. The process of creation began when? On the 25th of Elul. The Rosh Hashanah hu yom vav lebriya, and Rosh Hashanah is actually the day, the sixth day of creation. It falls on the sixth day of creation. Who was created on the sixth day of creation? Yom shenivra by Adam Rishon. It's the day on which Adam Rishon, the first man, was created. If that's the case, why is the day of Rosh Hashanah called the beginning of your Hashem's actions, creations? That's question number one.
Yeah.
It's the sixth day of creation. Another nuance to the question: why indeed did they not set the day of Rosh Hashanah to be marked? When we say the phrase says Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of your actions, so why set it on the sixth day of creation? The day man was created, set it on the first day of creation.
So this Maimer now we're about to learn is the follow-up Maimer from the last Maimer.
I'm not sure if it's exactly a follow-up. It's a follow-up in the sense that he discusses the same theme.
It's the same thing.
The same question. But he explains it, we'll see how the Rebbe explains it. He explains it in a different manner. In Chassidus you'll find it's very, very common that you have the same question and there are different answers brought on the same question. Even in the previous Maimer, the Rebbe brought 4 answers, which he didn't think.
But he brought 4 answers, but then he brought it to a head with the final conclusion.
Correct, because he found flaws in each of the answers. Nevertheless, each of the answers is legitimate in its own right.
Can I ask you a question, so I can understand? So, the concept of a Maimer, does it dissect certain... If I had to explain to someone, I learned a Maimer this morning, they said, well, what is a Maimer? How do I explain to someone what a Maimer actually is?
A Maimer of Chassidus is known in the terminology of Chassidus Divrei Elokim Chaim, the word of the living God, meaning to say, it's a reference to the inner dimension of concepts, the inner dimension of Torah. So, for example, if we talk about this particular Maimer, where the theme is Rosh Hashanah, on the surface, what's Rosh Hashanah? It's the day of judgment. You come to Shul, you daven, you ask Hashem to be, I'm here, I'm doing Teshuvah, and so on. The process starts Rosh Hashanah, ends on Yom Kippur, and you move on. A Maimer will explain to you the deeper dimension of what Rosh Hashanah is about, where it all comes from. Why is it the day of judgment?
Right. So it's
and what actually takes place on Rosh Hashanah. So Chassidus will talk about Rosh Hashanah, as the Rebbe will indeed in this Maimer, as the day we crown Hashem as a king.
Yeah.
And it's to draw down the new energy for the whole forthcoming year, because that's necessary.
Which is something you won't see if you just read the Torah in its
you won't find that.
You're not going to find.
No. So now, the way the Maimed is constructed, normally it starts on a verse, asks questions on this verse or this phrase, on the concept, then goes into an explanation, and sometimes we won't necessarily answer the questions that it asks. It sort of sets it up in a certain framework and context, and then discusses the issue. But by the time you're done, you should have an extra insight into the deeper dimension of it.
Right.
Which
Even if you don't get a conclusion, you'll understand the inner essence
of the point that he's trying to make in the Maimer. Here, for example, you will have a deeper understanding into what really goes on Rosh Hashanah, and therefore what really should be going on in my heart, and therefore what should be going on in my heart in terms of my connection to Hashem.
Thank you.
So that's what it's about,
Very good.
right?
And
So
that's every minor, isn't it?
basically, yeah. Some Amorim are more emphasize more the avodah aspect, the actual service of Hashem aspect. Are more emotional. They talk to the heart. Some are more intellectual. They talk more to the mind and they dissect, concepts.
I see. So it either affects the heart or the mind.
Or both, yeah. But the idea basically is that once you're done, you're lifted. Okay, you're taken into a deeper, meaningful world.
Yeah.
The narrative behind the narrative, so to
You come
speak.
to a new world. It's a new world.
Yeah.
It's an inner new world.
Correct.
Okay.
Pnimiyus HaTorah, that's what it is. It's the inner dimension of the Torah.
Right. Okay. Now I know.
So the question is, why is Rosh Hashanah called the beginning of Hashem's actions when it's actually the sixth day of creation, the day man was created? And why indeed, if the idea is that Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of Hashem's actions, the beginning of creation, then set it for the first day of creation. Why set it for the sixth day of creation? Chassidus explains this. What is the idea of Rosh Hashanah? This day is the time of crowning and drawing down Hashem's kingdom. When Hashem created the world, initially, it was on his own initiative. Hashem decided to do so. So he initiated, he drew down his divine energy. He is the one that did all the work and brought us into being. But that was a one-time event. From that point on, every year, when it comes the time of the new year, we have to draw down Hashem's desire, so to speak, to be king over the world all over again. That's why it says in Chassidus, for example, one of the inner aspects of Rosh Hashanah is that a new energy comes down into the world, new godly energy comes down into the world for the new year. And every year it's a new energy, and every year it's a higher energy. So initially, as I said, it was Hashem's initiative. But from that point on, every year now it depends on us. It depends on our Aveda, serving Hashem at Rosh Hashanah, blowing the shofar, and doing all those things, which has the effect of drawing down Hashem's energy for the forthcoming year for the entire world, or actually all the worlds. So that's what he's saying is.
We affect all the worlds?
Absolutely. Because we are the end, so to speak, of the process. So all the energy comes from all the way from its original source and root, travels through all the different realms and levels, and
back upwards.
And does whatever it needs to do in those realms and levels, expands and presents itself there, and then continues on into our realm. That's why, of course, it's the day of judgment when Hashem judges us for parnasa, for health, for nachas, and so on and so forth. Because the whole new energy, everything, the energy for the entire year and for every aspect of the year, for worlds, for man, for everything, comes down on that day.
Can I ask you one question? There is a concept that every neshama that comes into this world has a fixed muzzle in certain areas, and has a strong muzzle in certain areas and a weak muzzle in other areas. If that muzzle is preordained and set, how come? If my muzzle is not in health or in panas or anything, how can I change that if it's a set muzzle?
Because for Yidden in particular, mazel is not a determination. It's a predisposition towards something, but it could be changed. The phrase is Ein Mazel Yisrael. Chazal say, the sages say, Ein Mazel Yisrael. It simply means that a Yid doesn't have mazel, but that's not really what it means. Chassidus explains it to mean that the mazel doesn't limit.
He's saying we're above mazel.
Correct. The mazel doesn't limit us, because we have a dimension that we can link into, which is beyond Mazel.
Yeah.
And if we do that, we have the ability to change things up. You are right that people are born on certain zodiacs and certain constellations,
that's what I hear.
so they have a predisposition. Somebody that's born under the Mazel Maiden, for example, he might have a rough type of personality, and therefore he should be a sheikhet or a male or that kind of thing. You know what I mean? But that's a predisposition. But it could be channeled, number one, and it could be influenced if you go beyond the Mazel. So it's not as straightforward as that. And the same thing also with what is predetermined for the person in terms of parnasa and so on and so forth. Through different methods and means, that could be changed upwards or changed downwards. I'm not even talking about, even when we talk about, for example, if a person is predestined to be wealthy, there's also limits to wealth. It could be more wealthy or less wealthy. You know what I mean? Yeah. For example. But even if it is the predetermined to the person not to be, that could also be changed up through rising and linking into to levels that are beyond. But be that as it may, Rosh Hashanah is the time of crowning Hashem. What does it mean, crowning Hashem? That I just outlined. It's a time when we come to Hashem and we say, please be the king over the world again, i.e., draw down your energy for the whole forthcoming year for all the worlds. And drawing down Hashem's kingdom. Now, what's kingdom? So the Rebbe says one of the important features of kingdom is that it has to be willingly. When we come to crown Hashem as a king, we do it willingly. He doesn't impose himself on us and force himself on us. We come and we ask him, please be the king over us, right?
Yeah.
Also, generally speaking, we're not talking about despotic kings, but when people want to crown a king over themselves, they come and they demonstrate to the king their willingness to become subordinate to him or her, right? Bittul, exactly. So that means it's willingly. There are two words in the Hebrew language which both denote rulership. One is melucha, kingdom. Memshala means rulership. Inyan ha-memshala ain't a muchach shia b'rotzen dafke. Memshala, rulership, doesn't necessarily have to be willingly. It could be imposed. You can impose rulership. You can impose power over people. V'efshali is gambal korche. It could be imposed against people's wills. Mash'enkin in ha-melucha b'rotzen dafke. When it comes to the idea of kingdom, that's specifically willingly. Right? And that's what we do on Rosh Hashanah. The idea of Hashem's kingdom, which is specifically willingly, who draws down that? Who has to show that they're willing to accept Hashem as a king? The human being. Right?
Yep.
This is the reason why, in the beginning of a creation, once man was created and he saw the creatures and he saw everything in the world, he turned around to all the living things and he said, come, let's kneel and let's bow and let's bless. Nivrecha is Nivrecha is not, I'm not sure if it means blessing. It means basically, let's make ourselves subordinate to Hashem, our maker. What does that mean? He recognized Hashem's kingdom and he said, we should demonstrate our willingness to be subordinate to him, to accept him as our king.
Yeah.
Therefore, when you look at the Song of the Day of Friday, right? Which was Friday was the sixth day of creation.
Yeah.
We say Boyu Nishtachav V'Nichra. We say Hashem Malach Geirus Lavish. Hashem was king, and he clothed himself in greatness. When was that? On the sixth day of creation, when man was created, and he introduced this idea of accepting Hashem's kingship to all of creation. It's from that point forward that it was innovated and came about that drawing down kingdom, Hashem's kingdom, is accomplished specifically through man.
Yeah, on the sixth day.
The Inyan Zeh, and this idea, Chayzer V'Neir, is repeated and reenacted V'chol Shana every year. When is that? On Rosh Hashanah, on the sixth day of creation. On Rosh Hashanah, we have to draw down Hashem's kingdom anew. K'maymer Azal, as the sages say, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem says to the Jewish people, Imru lefonei b'Rosh Hashanah Malchus, say before me, recite before me on Rosh Hashanah, recite before me verses of kingdom that demonstrate you're accepting my kingdom. Why? So that you may make me a king over you.
Yeah.
So this is the idea. This is the idea of Rosh Hashanah. It's a time when we accept Hashem's kingdom willingly, and then we do that every year anew, and that's done specifically by man, And that's why Rosh Hashanah is on the day man was created, rather than when creation began. That's the idea that I was starting to develop.
Yeah.
But he's going to go a lot deeper into that. Please, God will continue with him tomorrow.